Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. The Art Fair application results for 2024 started rolling in last week.
Oh, gross.
I hope you got something to steady those nerves.
I hate this time of year. I always felt like, especially that week when you have like several of the different shows announcing at once, there ought to be just like a giant ballroom, and it's like this awards banquet, and the winners go up and the losers have the losers lounge. I feel like there ought to be something to help us steady those nerves.
Maybe it'll be our episode today. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. My nerves are as high as anybody's, my friend. So we'll see how it goes. The first one of the season is going to be back for a lot of folks, and looks like I'll be seeing you in sunny Florida. I'm actually going to make the trek for the first time in several years.
Yeah, how long has it been for you?
I have not done Florida shows in 4 years since we moved out here to New Mexico. It's just been too far, but I get depressed being in my studio and not showing my work for a long period of time. And the rent being due.
It's a long stretch, isn't it?
It is a long stretch between, say, even, September, which is what a lot of folks do, and April, which is that big run, but without any shows. But then it's not depressing. There's a lot of light out here in New Mexico, so it's not the dreary cold that you get on the East Coast. But I'm looking forward to going back to Florida. I'm going to give it another go and see how it works out for me.
I mean, I myself, it's been a month off the road, and I'm already itching. I'm enjoying this time. But it's getting a little comfortable. I was used to the pace being a little more hectic over the summer. So, I kind of am enjoying it, but I'm also looking forward to getting out in November to another one out in California. Yeah,
I'm not really taking my foot off the gas this year and going into next. I mean, typically there's a big break. I did this show this month. I've got one coming in November, one in December, nothing in January, and then I'm kicking it up again right around that middle of February.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see how it goes, but I'm not really taking my foot off the gas.
How are things going out there? I mean, I'm hearing some mixed reviews on all the different fall shows.
All of my fall shows have been down. The last show that I just went to wasn't worth going to at all. I lost money on that. That has not happened in a long time for me.
Dang it!
So that was worrisome. But that one sucked. So I don't really want to call them out by name. But if you want to string the podcasts together and listen to last week's, you'll know exactly where I was. But Jesus, what a stinker! Wow. But, okay, like that show happened on, I am going to talk about it because you look for excuses and you look for reasons, but I don't know. I'm kind of leaning on the excuses for this one. Okay. There's an eclipse Saturday morning. Do you really want to go to the art show and see the eclipse? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you want to go to your science fair, or I don't know. Do whatever the hell you're doing. And then you got...
It seems like an odd pairing, right? An eclipse and an art show all at the same time.
And it was fun. My wife on the way out the door was kind enough to hand me the glasses. She had gone to the... I'm not sure where she got them, but she handed those to me on the way out the door, which was awesome. And I got to look at it and see without burning my retinas out.
Nice.
I don't know if you saw it where you were in Wisconsin, but we got a really healthy dose in New Mexico and then also down in Texas. But you could see the reflection of the sun and the crescent moon off of the leaves, casting shadows on the grounds, which was really cool. Like I had no idea it did that.
Wow. I honestly forgot it was even going on. We were probably blowing glass and just clueless. So
well, you didn't get it. You weren't right in the strip. Like it actually got darker where we were. Like it got dusky. And so that was pretty neat. But I was down the way from a younger artist, and I had to explain to her what orbit was, which didn't make me feel awesome.
Orbit?
Orbit, yeah, like the explanation of like the sun and planets traveling around. And she was kind of looked at me. I was like, you think with the planets, and then sometimes they're in each other's way, and then that casts a shadow, and
right.
Yeah, that didn't, because she was like, "Oh my God, it's so cool!" Because I showed her with the glasses, and it's like the the crescent is on one side and now it's on the other side.
I'm a little worried about our education system, where it's going, where it's been.
That's how it works. Sorry. Anyway, that was interesting to have at an art show. But then the next day it was sports day, and there was a playoff, and there's a baseball thing and a football thing happening, and
too many strikes.
Do you worry about that with the sports day, the sports thing on the?
Yes and no.
Sometimes it happens. Like, I mean, you can't deny it. If there's a football game and you're at Kentuck, home or away, it doesn't make any difference. If there's an afternoon football game, you are not going to see anyone. That is what is up. Like, you're in Alabama, they're watching Alabama. Roll Tide. Like, that's sorry, Bulldogs. Sorry, Greg Turco. But that's what's up in Kentuck. It's like, well, the football game starts at 1 and at 12, everyone left. So,
yeah.
I mean, you just have to know your market. Plus the hotels at that show, if there's an in-town home football game, it's like, you stay at a Fairfield Inn for $500. It's just not. Right. Yeah.
Well, that brings me back to when we were doing Plaza. There was, the big Chiefs game on Sunday when Taylor Swift was in town. And I mean, everyone was saying the show's going to be a ghost town on Sunday. It wasn't as slow as I had predicted, but getting back to the hotel that night, everyone in their jerseys coming back from the game, I'm like, that really is a thing. People travel, to cities and to see the game.
Yes, Douglas, they do.
Yes, they do.
People like football.
I guess so.
Fucking with you. So yeah, I did find also there were a lot of sad, like on game was on Sunday, obviously, and so Saturday night it was just like my hotel was just jammed with Bears fans.
Oh,
and they were super obnoxious, and it kind of felt a little good Sunday night to going into the hotel with all the sad Bear fans, just like oh, you're the football game did win. So sorry, Bears fans, that was funny. I liked that. So
all right, well, there was your silver lining.
Yeah, good for the home. Go for the home team.
Yeah,
go for home teams and underdogs, Douglas. That's how I roll.
Yeah.
Well, Douglas, it's really interesting to be here on the podcast today with you. I'm really glad to see your face here on the Zoom podcast as we're recording. And
Okay, switch the speed, man. What is going on here?
I got at the last show, and he is listening to me talk to another artist, and he interrupts me, and he's like, I'm sorry, but you kind of sound like, are you Will Armstrong from the Independent Artist Podcast? I was like, yeah, I am. And, sometimes people recognize our voices, which is fine.
For sure, yeah.
It's always nice. But he was like, yeah, you sound like that, but you sound a lot slower because I listened to you guys at 1.5.
Oh, there you go.
You listen to Douglas at 1.5? Like, that guy talks fast. So I wanted No, you don't. I mean, it's funny though, because I just wanted to speed up our talk, and there's no way he can understand us at this point if I'm talking that fast.
My son was telling me he does that in college when they have to watch, recorded lectures. He's like, he listens to them at 1.5 speed just so, can get through a little faster.
So it sounds like us, but a little bit higher pitched.
Okay.
Just a little bit, right? So anyway, however you listen, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks
whether it's fast or slow or
we'll take
whatever. Whatever. Hey, let's I have a little bit of sponsor news from NAIA.
Cool.
They have some new projects they're working on that I wanted to talk about.
What's the story with this little video that they put out?
The PR committee created a promo video to help promote the art show circuit, to bring to new collectors awareness that art shows are places where they can come and buy handmade work from artists. And they're going to start rolling it out on YouTube. Some paid promotions to help shows with their own promotions to just spread the word about this industry. So it's not to help a specific show necessarily, but it's to help art shows in general.
Because I saw the video. It's a real short clip kind of thing, well produced.
It's like one of those bumper ads, like if you watch YouTube and they identify through the algorithms your interests. Then perhaps if you're an art person or whatever, it'll be one of those bumper ads before you actually get to watch the video that you were looking to watch.
So instead of buying the new Stones record advertisement, which I for some reason always see,
that's what you get. Okay.
Yeah. Then they're gonna be having that on there in front. Cool. That makes sense, because I was wondering what it was. It almost seemed like you're sitting in your seat on a Delta airplane, and then the ad comes up before they tell you to put your seatbelt on and how to breathe when the thing comes down.
It's like, you already got me. But NAIA has switched from being a membership organization to an advocacy group. So really it's to advocate for artists, advocate for the market for artists, to bring awareness to what we all do out there and what we're trying to sell, sell our artwork.
Interesting. Does NAIA still control the weather?
They try.
No, I think that's funny when you get I talked earlier in the show just about excuses and reasons, and that's one of the excuses people like to use. It like, well, the NAIA is in charge. I'm like, well, then how come Carol Swayze can't get into the show she wants to sometimes, or all of us? I'm just using her as an example,
right? As an example,
that's some nonsense. It always has been an advocacy group, but what the NAIA is trying to do more is to just establish themselves as that. As just a group that helps, whether it's artists or show directors. It's similar kind of, which is why they sponsor us, to what we are doing,
Exactly.
and giving a voice to the same level playing field so that we can kind of understand each other.
Yeah. So they're going to start this fall with targeting a few of the major shows and kind of doing some cross promotions. So let's say there's a major show going on in a particular city, just to see, kind of learn from it. And then once they start to develop some data, then they can start rolling it out more next year into, let's say, Florida Art Fair season or whatever, just to help bring people to the art shows and learn about art shows.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, nice work on that. And again, like I said, nice production values on that. I know that Evan Reinheimer has been making his own videos for his own, and just to get the word out about his own work and about like his feelings and insights onto shows, which is a great series, by the way. If you want to look that up on YouTube, if you're enjoying what we do, chances are you'll enjoy what Evan does as well. That's always a link in our show notes as well. We'll make sure that that's there, a link to his page. But similar production values, which I think he's a pro. So really, really nice work across the board that you guys did.
Cool. Okay, so something I'm working on at home here. We've been busy making artwork, just basically stocking up for the next shows and everything.
Sure.
But, as we're getting close to seasonal changes and it's going to start getting pretty cold up here in Wisconsin, I'm trying to do those last minute kind of like preparations for next year, like the display, giving that a good old cleanup. And I'm going to actually work on outfitting the van this week so that when we head out next year, I don't have to pull everything out of the van to pack it and repack it when we're at the show on the street. So wish me luck on that one. That's
I look at different people that have done it, and they did a whole thing at St. Louis where people were pulling apart their vans and showing emerging artists how to pack them or how they pack them. You know who did a really great job, if you search back through this, is the Heckers. John Hecker outfitted his and did a lot of sound dampening too, so that it's not as noisy. So he insulated that sucker and did some sound baffling and then sealed it all in there before he built his stuff. So dig back through that and see if you can see some of his videos. That's some good insight there.
Was that something he posted on his own social media?
On his own social media. So John and Patricia Hecker, Tattoo Dreams, they're some artists that a lot of you folks know out there. They've been doing shows for a long time. Really good people. Getting ready to move to Santa Fe, actually. So we're getting ready to see a lot more of those folks. So that'll be great.
Well, there's Greenville and now there's Santa Fe. Looks like all you guys are moving to Santa Fe.
Yes. I mean, Santa Fe's always been an artist mecca, right? George O'Keeffe wrecked it for everybody.
I guess so. Hey, we had a really great talk last week with Sara Collier.
Dude, I loved this talk.
Yeah, me too.
She was so forthcoming.
She's one of our besties, but I rarely think of her as Sara. I always think of her name as Charm School Dropout. The name of her business is, her art business. I always refer to her as Charm School.
It's like Phobot's, Amy and Phil. It's like if I run into them at the bar, it's like, well, I ran into Phobot's and even Philbot again in my head.
Philbot's an easy one to bleed together.
Nice, Philbot.
That's Philbot.
It's Amy and Philbot. But she's Charm School to me. Just cut it short, but Charm School was there. Incredible to hear the background story on that.
Totally.
Where do you guys stand? I was going to ask you this and ask her this when we were talking, but where do you guys stand? You guys are Sigworth Glass. I am Will Armstrong Art, but I used to have a business name that I hate now. Like I will find old business cards and things, but I had a business name. It was like kind of sounded a little bit like Charm School Dropout. I used to travel around with a Airstream trailer, and they used to call those guys from the 40s the tin can tourist. So I'd call
Oh,
my business that. I'm the tin can tourist, and I
yeah.
fucking hate it now.
And then at some point it just turned and you're like, I can't take this anymore, right? It's just.
Well, yeah, I hated it. And it's just like, it's hard for me to take myself seriously if I have a business name, but with hers, it really works. I don't
It
know.
sure does. Yeah. And like you said, the background story, which everybody will get to hear here shortly, it just fits. And it fits kind of her whole vibe of like, so much of the way we do things in the world is just nonsense. It's all just these social norms that are bullshit. And, she's somebody who can be just so real. When you meet her and she talks about stuff, she doesn't hold back. She's an open book, as she says. So
yeah, and it's just definitely like, I mean, it's you've got dance music at the cotillion, happens to be Motorhead or the Dead Kennedys. You got Sara Collier. This is what you got, folks. This is who she is. She's no bullshit, and I loved talking to her. It was amazing.
And we're talking now, having done the recording of the interview already, but you guys are going to get to hear me be like, what is all this stuff you're talking about? I wait, hold on. I don't
Charm
get
School
it.
and cotillion is a thing, folks. Us Southerners had to educate poor Douglas and the Midwesterners out there. Yeah, and it was fun to do a talk with you, sir.
Yeah.
We've done that several times, and to do kind of just a three-way talk was a lot of fun.
Well, here she is, Sara Collier, Charm School dropout. I hope you enjoy this talk, everyone. This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Doug, I was sitting down and talking with my wife yesterday. She had just come in from her studio and she was complaining. One of the big shows, they decided to do a do-it-yourself, reinvent the wheel application.
I hate that. Hate that so much.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's like typically an application that would take you 2 minutes on Zap. All of a sudden, it's going to take you an hour and a half to reformat all of your images to their specifications. It just made me think about how easy applying with Zap is.
You just click a few buttons, you've got your 1920s already formatted, and you are good to go.
Exactly. So I personally appreciate what Zap is doing, and thanks for not making us reinvent the wheel every single week like we used to have to do.
Sara, this may not be the best idea, you and I in the same room together. Douglas is already getting nervous.
Well, here's the thing. So I brought up to Will last week, I go, Will, I want to talk to Sara Collier. And he said, no, me. And I go, no, me. And he goes, how about both of us? And Sarah's like, oh, God, Will's going to get me in trouble. My snark will come out.
I just feel like whenever we get together, we're always just kind of like, hey, let's be shitty about something. So, my wife actually had a question, Douglas, maybe from Sara and I. How have you managed to not get salty? Like the rest of us have gotten so salty. Like, is it... I don't think it's cocaine. You don't seem like that kind of guy, but
I'm not salty. Well, why don't you check in with Renee and see how salty I can get on a day-to-day basis?
All right.
We rarely see it in the streets, Doug. Rarely.
Hey, sunshine.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good to hear. Well, Sara, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us.
Glad to. Love to be here. Love you guys both.
Thank you. We love you. And how is it that none of us have a show this weekend? It seems like a huge weekend. Everybody's on the road.
No
I feel like we should do a triple high five on it, truthfully.
Seriously. Yeah. Congratulations on not being in Virginia or Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah. Well, last weekend you were in Tennessee, weren't you, Sara?
Yes. I did tackle last weekend. I'm a fan. I've found a little variety of some smaller shows that I feel like are a good fit for me. Bayou is it's tough for me. It tests my boundaries.
It's tough for everyone, I think.
Yeah.
I know, and but people keep doing it, and I'm like, how? How do you not go and burn Houston down?
It happens. What's that? Hey, TACA's
it's the Tennessee
Arts and Crafts.
But the fall...
So you have to be from Tennessee in order to do it, right?
No, the beauty of the fall show is they open it to everybody.
Okay.
Their spring show is just limited to Tennessee, and then they do like the surrounding states. But the fall show is open to everybody. It runs the gamut in terms of what's there. But it's kind of nice because there's really only maybe 10 to 20% 2D wall artist. And Nashville got some money.
Oh, yeah.
I have fond memories. That's where I grew up.
Yeah. Is it where the show is held? Is that?
Yes, and they've done a revamp on Centennial Park there. And so they've put down these beautiful pavers and pea gravel. And so it really is, if you're okay with dollying a little bit, I like it. Also,
Sure.
secret's out now.
Yeah, you just ruined it. You just made you went from a small show to a big show, and we're like, wow, how come this is so hard to get into now? That's welcome to the podcast.
But you said you tried something different this time. You said you went off all on your own.
I did. So Aaron, as a lot of people know, my husband Aaron, he is the backbone of all the heavy labor and things that I don't like to do. He builds all of my frames. He puts the tent up. He does the driving. I mean, he really is like just that guy, and he's great.
That's cool.
But recently I felt like I ought to know how to do this by myself after 12 years, just in case, God forbid. And
you gave him a little trial run, like here it is without you, just in case.
Also, side note, it's horrible.
He needed to know how important he was and how valued he is.
Do not recommend.
Yeah.
But I did 4 Bridges by myself, and that's another good one to kind of do by yourself. And then I did TACA.
How come? Is it just because they're easy?
I think so. I think those shows. God, especially 4 Bridges. There is not an easier show to do, truly.
Did they move the date on that? Didn't it used to be spring?
Yeah, those weren't together. So I did 4 Bridges back in April, and then more recently, last weekend, TACA. Okay. So I've tried 2 shows by myself. I made it through both. I did have to FaceTime Aaron 5 times, 6 times.
Let me guess how to put up the tent.
Yeah.
How is this connector work? And it's all color coded.
He's
now.
Like in a duck blind somewhere.
Yeah, he's in his kayak and he's like, what the fuck?
Right.
But sorry, I just F-bombed it.
Just wait till Douglas gets going. He's the potty mouth. You just wait.
But I've been known to back Will's mic off when a few of those F-bombs fly.
Oh yeah, he only does that to me when I've said something kind of sexist or particularly heinous, and you'll hear it just kind of
you, man.
I love you, buddy. Thank you, sir.
Just don't want you to get canceled.
Right, exactly. It could happen any second. Just saying the word sexist, all of a sudden.
But yeah, it's just not easy, and I give credit to all the people out there doing it on their own all the time. I mean, I know now. I'm just like, yeah, let's just try to make this happen together. But I do feel bad because, the majority of the time, once he sets the tent up, he's basically babysitting our dog, and that's not fun. Not when you could be drum fishing or working or whatever.
Sure.
Is it the 2 of you guys? Does he have a separate day job, or does he come and do shows with you on the side?
So we've been real fortunate with that. So in the beginning, I was a high school guidance counselor and Aaron was a math teacher, and we both had maybe reached burnout stage with our job. My mother had a critical illness that required me to reevaluate, and I had done some shows in a different capacity and some gallery shows. But when it came time to look at things, it just became more sensible for Aaron to join in. We don't live large, so coming off of a teacher's salary into an artist salary was not a real shocker.
Okay.
Sadly.
How long had you guys been in education before you kind of said this was enough for you?
I was in for about 15 years and Aaron was maybe in for about 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I loved it. I was a high school guidance counselor, so I had a little bit more flexibility, and Aaron taught math, and everyone hates math, and their math teacher know it. And so he had a little bit more of the to hell with you, man.
Yeah, he's like the dentist of the teaching world.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of, you're the I could see going from high school guidance into the art show world as being a
Yeah.
fairly seamless transition in dealing with
Pretty much
artists. And
same.
yeah, all right, that kind of makes sense. Can we get a little
Yeah.
therapy from you?
Yeah,
Is that a doable
always.
thing? All right.
So I've always wondered about guidance counseling. Is that more like career preparation, or is it also like, psychology, that kind of thing too? Is it a mix?
It's a mix. My background is in, so I went to fine art school and at the University of Tennessee, did all of that, got out of college, had no idea what I was supposed to do with that,
Mm.
with a painting degree. So I made it for about a year and a half of just waiting tables and doing odd jobs and some graphic design stuff. And I was like, I can't do this. And so I applied to graduate school, and my dad he was a pastoral counselor, so he did therapy for ministers.
Mhm.
And I had always kind of been interested in that. And so I was like, yeah, let me find what my right area in that is. And I had been a camp director, and I had done some other things with young folks, and I was like, maybe this would be a good fit. And so it was, and it is a mixture of both. Well, it's whatever they tell you to do, truthfully, because sometimes I was like, I'm the assistant principal today.
Okay.
It's a good mixture of doing psychology, crisis intervention, a lot of triage, and then career planning and college planning. And I was the person that was like, to my school's unhappiness sometimes, but like, not everybody needs to go to college.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in that. It's great to have extra knowledge, but like, I don't think it's for everybody. And we had a wonderful trade school at the high school that I worked at here in North Carolina. They had a wonderful masonry program, and Aaron actually ran their carpentry program for a year when the guy that had been doing it had to take a year off. Fond memories.
What part of Carolina are we talking about?
This is in Wilmington, where we are now. We
Okay.
had come from Shelbyville, Tennessee, the walking horse capital of the world,
Yeah.
teeny tiny town. And I had lived here for a little bit after college, and I always wanted to get back because the ocean's here and it's just a lovely place. So we ended up
Yeah.
back here and Aaron was still in college because he's a baby.
Did you do a little cradle robbing
I
there?
did.
Nice work. Nice
I
work.
robbed the cradle, and I'm proud of it.
Well, if he's doing all the heavy lifting, his back will last longer.
Yeah,
That's
he
good.
can last longer.
Yeah, this is not a young man's game.
Yeah, exactly.
What was it about being a guidance counselor that you said burned you out and made you want to move on to something else?
I'm not really sure that's exactly where I was. I was tired,
Hmm.
because they just will work you until you fall over. But also, like, I was coaching soccer. I was, if you needed a field trip person, I was just into it. And I think I just had gotten a little bit overworked, and I am not about the hustle. I'm about the relax. And so, yeah, and like I said, my mom got sick, and I felt a responsibility to her and to make sure that she was getting the care that she needed. She had a stroke in 2009, and so sorry, that's a downer, but
Yeah.
Well, it's
anyway,
real life, yeah.
it is real life. And a lot of us are at the point where parental caretaking has entered the equation.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
mine was a little earlier than most.
You get to this certain age with a lot of people, and it's really just one trip up. I mean,
Mhm.
not that a stroke is a trip up; it's a huge event. But
Yeah.
it's one broken knee, it's a slip
Yep.
and a fall, and all of a sudden, okay, that can,
Your life is different.
at 80s, that can kill
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And we get through that period where, we raise our kids and then we actually start caring for our parents. And it is that strain. I mean, what do they call, like, the sandwich generation or something, where you're
Yeah.
taking care of both ends of it?
If you have both going, I can't imagine. I mean, truthfully, I think that was one of the things that played into our deciding not to have children, was just there was already a lot of caretaking going on in a high school and a lot of caretaking going on with my parents. And yeah, don't throw a baby on that.
Throw a baby on the fire. That's no good. Yeah, good for you. Good for you to know that about yourselves and just make a choice.
So were you still doing your art interest during all this crazy time, and eventually it just kind of took over and that became your sole focus?
Yes, it carried through. I never quit after college. I just kept making things, and it was like, and even the themes of the work that I make have stayed pretty consistent since then. I was fortunate to go through a pretty strong program that had good teachers, and we had a strong group of people in that program that have all gone on and had pretty nice professional careers in art. I was scared. I was like, in the back of my head, my parents had been like, I don't know if that's a real good career move to get a painting degree. But they went with it.
Yeah, it's not. It's a bad idea.
It's a really bad idea. Speaking of the choice not to go to college.
Yeah, they were right. That's the thing, though. A lot of times art school will bind you up. Were you the type of person that got a lot out of the art school, or did you feel like it changed you in a way that
that's a good
was hard?
Question. No, that's a great question. I loved it in terms of it's its own weird bubble of not reality. Like you have a studio space and you're surrounded by other working artists. We mixed in with the grad students when we got to a certain point. So you're really getting to see what everybody was doing. And there was some good art being made at my school.
Plus you get tons of reactions all the time to your work and to other people's work. It's a really inspirational kind of period where when you're alone in your own studio, you don't have that to push against.
100%. 100%.
Sometimes I go from the opposite. Like I went through the illustration. Not this talk is now about me, everyone. No, but I went through the illustration.
What's new?
All right. So I do this. I just got to talk about me. Oh man. Thank God. It's me time. Everybody get a cup of coffee. No, but illustration department is what I chose because I actually wanted to paint things that looked like things as opposed to I don't love I do love abstract painting, but I'm just not good at creating it. And so I felt like, going into the fine art program and seeing, people are like, well, that's too realistic. And then you go into the illustration program and it's like, well, that's not realistic enough. And I kind of wanted to walk this line. There were some really talented medical illustrators that were that dictated the whole program because they were clearly just head and shoulders above everybody else, and so everybody was trying to be like them. And I was like, I want to paint a lobster sailing a sailboat, and it just was different. So I didn't love my experience at school, but I felt like that bound me up, which is why I was kind of asking you.
Yeah.
Your sense is a similar, aesthetic. It's in no way the same as mine, but at the same time, it
agreed
fits in the same dialogue, I guess.
Yeah. And I took a lot of design classes and was definitely geared towards that. I was working some graphic design jobs in school and putting things together for people. We had an incredible printmaking department at my school, and it was great while I was in it. They literally gave us no idea other than just, oh, well, you'll get out and a gallery will pick you up and you'll move to New York and be famous.
You mean like career advice, like how you can sell your work, what you can do with it when it's done? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You just,
Yeah. Was that did art shows ever come up? It sounds like no, but if they did,
never.
Did they look down their nose at it, or have you had any kind of backlash since you've started this from your snobby peers?
No, I mean, most of my peers either went on to professorships or are just really kind of setting a standard in their field. A guy that that was in my group is probably like the most well-known letterpress artist in the United States right now. I mean, he worked with Jim at Hatch Showprint Kevin
Oh, wow.
Bradley.
All right.
Kevin
God
Oh,
bless him.
Yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, so we had this group of people that really were able to step out and become. Rob Tarbell was another guy that he was in graduate school when I was there, but he has gone on and had a pretty nice professional career. I don't want to be like name dropping all over the place, but it was a good group
Why?
of people.
This is your opportunity. Do it.
I'm just gonna name drop from here
Just
out.
for the rest of the hour. I met
And then
Bill Murray one time.
and then I know this person. So I just remember it was the end of school. We were out the night maybe of graduation. A friend of mine had gotten a job at Coca-Cola doing design work for them. Another friend of mine was moving to New York. And I remember we were all sitting in this bar back when I drank, and everybody was like, just, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. And I was like, shit, I think I forgot to get like a job that goes with this after now that you're done with school part, because I was just happy with doing that. That was good.
I mean, you also said you're happy doing, and I feel like maybe we're kindred spirits on this, but like just the remarkably adept at doing nothing is what I say about myself sometimes.
I love it, man. It is literally, I see people that just are busting ass, and I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
I mean, I love leisure. And when I say leisure, I mean like I like just walking around outside. I mean, it's not like leisure, like let's go to Paris.
Kind of being alone in your thoughts and just having that time for processing.
Absolutely. And I just, again, privilege noted, but I really, I could be I am the lazy man's gal. I'm okay with that. It's good.
Well, you mentioned back before you drank, we met at a very interesting time. We were neighbors, and sometimes we have our first meetings with somebody who's a booth neighbor as we're kind of going through some shit. And you kind of were like a good counselor, psychology friend for me. But I show up at Oklahoma City, and that was the week that I had decided that I wanted to evaluate my relationship with alcohol. And I remember feeling a little uncomfortable about it, feeling a little bit of shame, feeling like wondering, do I have an issue with this? Is it something I should change? And I remember bringing it up to you, and you were like the perfect person to be there. You were like, there is life after alcohol, And we bonded so much over that long week. And I decided that at first it was going to be kind of a break. And then I realized my life is better without it. And I have, so I don't know if there was a problem. It doesn't matter if there was a problem. Really what it is being more present.
Oh, there was a problem. I'm just kidding, Doug. You were fine.
This turns into an intervention on me. I'm out.
But there's a conversation that we haven't had on the podcast is really kind of choosing and working through kind of some of those issues. And I don't know if you want to talk about any of that or if you're comfortable with that or.
I'm an open book. One of my greatest envies is those that can find the balance with it, because with anything, to be able to go out, have a couple of beers, be with your friends, there's such a social component to that. Whatever, have a couple of cigarettes, not be drawn into every single thing that you come across to the point where you're like, oh, this is ruining some things. Yeah, I envy that. It had to be all or nothing for me, unfortunately. I went through the program for a little bit, and, that wasn't really my cup of tea. I've read all of the AA literature and used it, what I can take from it. And it was just that it was what I had to do. And then, as I mentioned to you, Doug, at one point I found out my actual family history, and I was like, oh, it really was what I needed to do.
Okay. Are you saying there was a genetic component to it?
Yeah. So not to take us on a real sideways turn, but so I'm an adopted child, and my parents, the people that raised me, my mom and dad, I mean, they socially drank, and we had alcohol in the house, and I definitely dove in full force when I was a teen, and all the way through till I was 36. And yeah, it was just part of life and what you did. Then I kind of started to notice it was affecting just my attitude, and I would have real bad hangovers and be in a bad spot the next day.
Right.
Like I'd lose days is how I described it, to just sadness. And literally a lot of our social interaction with people, we were teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, you go out on the weekends. Wilmington's a great town for going out, and there's a good scene here. And I think everybody was a little shocked because, like, Sara is fun drunk.
That's hard, man. I remember going to a show. I guess it was Coconut Grove, and then it was like there was an extra weekend, and then there was another big one. It was like maybe Gasparilla, I think. Maybe I've got the timing wrong, but it went. So there was a filler show, and everybody went down to Key West. And everybody was partying, all these artists, and it was like, it was really fun for about 36 hours. And then it starts to kind of realize where you're like, alcohol is a depressant. And after all of these different days and all of these different artists on this kind of like extended bender, it was just ugly. Everybody was like, I was kind of like, God, this person's not fun anymore. They're not fun anymore. They're crying.
Yeah.
It just was a mess. And I mean, it does make you realize those little things about just the scene and, you know, teachers and kind of any group. I mean, artists, obviously, as well. And that kind of social drinking is so easy to step away from, you know, your life and go away to a city or go away to this place, and all of a sudden it's a big party, but you won't be young for long.
Yeah. Well, for me, what kind of came into the picture for me was we were, we would have a glass of wine or two, and I really don't think we had periods where like the next day we would like not feel motivated to work or anything, but we just felt like we have these teenagers now, we're messaging something to them. And so that was the first kind of piece. But then I started to feel more present. And there was something about that helped our relationship with the kids. It helped the relationship with each other. And I found a lot of benefit from that.
100%. I mean, to be available clearly to your young people is a gift. And I imagine, I don't know, Doug, but I imagine there might have been a shift after that in your relationship to your children.
For sure.
Did that feel like that? Yeah.
For sure. Definitely.
So,
and
also, I'm not against anything, truthfully.
Absolutely.
And
good, because I still drink.
Because I'm a heroin freak.
I love
absolutely.
I'm a recreational heroin user. It's just, just when you kick back, have a few shots. No, I do not do heroin, anyone. Calm down. Nobody's doing heroin.
People are writing letters right now. They're like,
that's right. My fight or flight is kicking in. I'm ready to change the subject. All right.
But talk about the fact that, you were adopted and you have your parents, but then you come to find out this kind of genetic piece from reaching out and meeting your biological roots.
Well, I was always a little bit worried about like, what is my medical history? Because there are things that you do need to know about that maybe you can do as preventative care. And I'm a little hyper focused on that. So when I was 21, I remember my dad gave me some papers, and it was just these little bios about these people. And I was like, meh. And he was like, if you're interested in doing anything with this, let me know. And then I feel like my mom burst into tears at that same time. I was like, let's put that aside.
So this information was about your biological, where you came from?
Yeah, roots? This was about my biological family. Okay. In the 70s, during closed adoption times, I think basically families went through organizations ours was a child services program in Nashville to adopt a child. And it was very, there's a lot of paperwork and it was a lot of work. But that being said, you didn't get much information on your family of origin. And when I say literally a sheet, it was a sheet of paper, and it had about a paragraph about my biological mother and a paragraph about my biological father and a little bit about each of their extended families, like their mother and father and their grandparents.
And is it like personality type stuff? Is it medical stuff? I mean, what exactly do they explain to you?
They don't get, it's not much.
Yeah.
It's like your biological mother, no name or anything, was 5'1" and had red hair, and she enjoyed track. I mean, she was 17. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's not like you're going to get like, this is how this person ended up.
Totally.
But anyway, it was just like real generic-y information. And like, you know, your biological father was this age and he was into photography. And so, I mean, it had some things that I was like, but also not much. So anyway, my mom just didn't, I could see it was hurting her feelings to imagine my being like, well, I'm going to go find out who these people are. They sound better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I set it aside. And when she got ill, my mother, I was like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm approaching my 40s. I need to know if there's anything crazy out there. And so they had unlocked all of the adoption records in Tennessee. And I just submitted some forms. And I remember about 3 months later, I got a letter and they were like, you may come to the courthouse, or I think that's where it was, in Nashville, and we'll give you your file and you can read through it and we'll make copies of it and you can have all of it. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so this would have been maybe 2010. So yeah, computers were full on. Google was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down and Erin went with me and I read through all of it. And I mean, there was some crazy stuff in there, but to boil it all down, every single person in my biological family of birth were artists. And they were all also alcoholics, a lot of them.
Wow.
And so I was like, holy cow. And it had names and everything. But you do have a piece of paper that's like, please do not just randomly call these people up and be like, surprise.
But did a connection ever happen? Did you ever meet any of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did go home and Google everybody. And so
Facebook friended them. And
No. I was being a spy. So sadly, my biological mother had passed.
Okay.
And I would learn after having to get like her records that, she had died of alcoholism, as had her sister. It was a large family of people.
Mm.
And my grandmother biologically was a pretty well-known artist in Oklahoma. And so I was like, So I just kind of figured out, like, how am I going to float this out here?
Yeah.
This was not the way to do it. And so there was a memorial page set up for my mother. This is so crazy when I think about it. And I was like, I'll just drop my name on there. Like, people had left comments about like, sorry and whatever. And I was like, hey, I'm so-and-so's daughter and Camille. And if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, here's my email, on this weird tribute page. And I was like, that's out there and done. And about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, I get an email from a biological aunt that's like, we want to talk to you. And I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. She filled me in on everything. She kind of acted as the go-between for my biological grandmother, who was maybe getting into her 90s at that point in time, and the rest of the people. Everybody still knew everybody. They're all in Tulsa for the most part, except for this aunt who is in Canada. And they just patched it all together for me and put me in touch with my biological father and some uncles. I've got some brothers and sisters out there that I haven't really fully met. We are Instagram friends. My biological brother, whose name is also Aaron.
Wow.
And also that was my name on my birth certificate, which is too weird.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I got some gasps with that because it is
You
crazy.
did. You got podcast gasps.
So on your
Double in
birth
stereo.
certificate, you were Aaron, and then your mother named another child that they had Aaron?
No, well, right.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot to unpack there. But I guess when you have a baby that you're giving up for adoption, they're just like, you have to pick a name because we have to put it on the birth certificate. And I don't think she knew maybe perhaps what my sex was even. I think she had disconnected pretty well at that time. She went to the Florence Crittenton Home for Wayward Girls, basically, to have me. And because they were known well in Tulsa. And so I find out that my name was Aaron as well. And I'm like, did that play into my brain?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what happened? Yeah. And then she goes on later in life to have a child and names him Aaron as well. And yeah, we've been in touch, and he's kind of fun, and he's a big fisherman too. It's a little bit too close to home with all of it. Yeah, it is trippy. It makes you wonder about the universe.
Well, I love finding your roots stories. I love hearing all that stuff. And what was it like for you to meet all of these people that I'm sure there's all these similarities and weird moments that are odd? I mean,
it was both lovely and kind of crazy. Most people have a frame of reference of, oh, I look like such and such. Mm-hmm. And I just never had that and envied that in people. Like, oh, to see what my mother looked like, and do I resemble so-and-so? And so it sort of started to put these things into boxes. And my biological father and his wife, who he'd been married to forever, they were like, we would like to come and meet you at a show.
Oh, that's not a good idea.
Wow.
So did they?
I was like, perfect. What a perfect place for all of us to come together. Yes, it happened at Brookside. It ended up being very sweet and good, but I was not emotionally prepared for how my body was going to react without my brain to all of that. I was just like, after it happened, I was like, that was kooky, wasn't it? To be at your art show and
yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to get the lingerers in your booth to leave anyway, much less family members that you've never met.
You've never met before.
Let's start a relationship. Also, this person's interested in this painting. Can we talk over here for a second?
It was that exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is an artist as well, and
really,
and his wife is lovely. She's actually probably the person I have the most contact with. And I could tell it was hard for him too, truthfully. You know, he was being drafted to go to Vietnam, and they weren't real in love or anything. It was just they were kids. And so a decision had to be made, and I think it had to be made quickly, and because he was being sent to Germany and then to Vietnam.
Wow.
And our adult brains can process those realities, of those decisions if we were in that spot or whatever. But then when you're at a show meeting him for the first time, you've got that little kid reaction that is behind the veil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Right. I have prided myself on being tough as nails, or trying to at least put that out there. Yeah, it put me it didn't put me in a tailspin. I was not prepared. I don't think you can be prepared for that. But it was good looking back on it now, and we have as much of a relationship as I think that I need and that they need. I wasn't looking for a set of parents or anything like that. I was looking for some, I guess, closure in who I am in this world. And as I told you, Douglas, that literally was finding out that they were all artists. This is pre-meeting them. I was like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to be an artist. And so that was kind of the final, go forth and invest yourself in this.
And have faith that this is your path.
Yeah, not that you needed permission, but you kind of gave yourself permission. because of that. Are your parents, the parents that raised you, are they still with us? Are they still?
They are both deceased, sadly.
They ever get to know that you had a relationship with your birth parents?
My mom did, and she was cranky pants about it. But that's okay. She had every reason to be. It's funny because she was quite a character herself. The whole charm school dropout comes from sort of an inside joke between my mother and I, because I don't know, as parents, she wanted to give me everything she didn't have. And sometimes you don't think about, well, maybe that's not what my child wants. She was just doing the best she could to give me the life that she wished that she had had. And that was a life of fancy times and being a debutante.
So we're talking Charm School Dropout. That's what you named your art business, is Charm School Dropout. So were you actually enrolled in Charm School, or is it more, that actually happened?
Yeah, I went to both Charm School and then also to Cotillion.
That's amazing. Okay, I went to Cotillion too. I was a Southerner, Southern born and raised, and I also went to Cotillion.
Okay, this is something I don't know anything about. What is this school thing?
What's Cotillion?
Ladies and gentlemen are schooled in the art of behavior, or what is it? Etiquette?
Yeah, it's two separate things, but I want to know what Charm School is. What does that mean to you? And you're talking about, you're raised in the Deep South. That's where this part of North Carolina is, and it's polite kind of society.
This is actually in Tennessee, back in Nashville, even more so.
Oh yeah. Do you know that Jimmy Buffett song about the Charm School kind of dropout and
no, and I'm surprised that some crazy person hasn't run up to a show and told me that.
West Nashville Ballroom. Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's do. It's amazing. He picks up this hitchhiker and she's a former Nashville or Tennessee debutante.
Oh, that was me.
Okay.
Yeah, that was you. Except you're not I think she was a prostitute, so sorry.
Wait, that's me too. I'm just
sorry,
kidding.
Aaron.
I have not. That's not been in my job. Aaron said,
tell us what's going on here. What is Charm School? You're in Tennessee.
So I'm in Tennessee. I think the first time I did anything that was like remotely about this is there was a dance program called Fortnightly. And all the fifth graders whose parents were into that, they still do it. But like, you were sent to Fortnightly, you were taught how to use the right fork. You had a dance at the end of it where your dance card, if you had any success rate at all, would be full. It was all of it. It was wearing dresses
and tulle and
the rest
pastel.
of you guys out there can't see the quizzical look on Douglas's face. He needs more information here. Your dance card is something that like people go in, they fill out an actual dance card that they want to dance with Sara. Mm-hmm. So they fill out the thing.
And you're like a product, right?
Yeah. Oh, you sit there and wait, and they come and sign your card. And then on the 7th dance, I have to go dance with Jay McKnight. Sorry, Jay. And just, it's kooky when I think about it, but it was a thing. And Will is here to back me up on that.
Yeah, this is, so my dad worked at an all-girls private school, boarding school in Richmond, Virginia. And so we knew a lot of that stuff. And I went to Cotillion, and Cotillion is in like, I think that was about 8th grade. And you go and you're in a ballroom and there's a stage. In our situation, there was a stage, and you had this older couple that was up there that would teach you how to dance. And you would line up on either side of this gigantic ballroom, and you weren't really sure who you were going to match up with. And you start to see, and you start to get, you're like, your palms start, mine personally, my palms start to sweat. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to dance with Tucker Andrews. I can't believe it. And, and it's just, it's this thing. And then you go, and then you learn how to do, you learn a waltz, you learn, God, the fun one was the pretzel.
Real useful stuff.
To me, this sounds like the 1940s, not the 1980s. Yeah. I mean, did it feel to you outdated, or did it feel like I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
That was the thing, is that the cotillion didn't really change. It was the same thing. And they're probably playing similar music. I mean, it was probably like, I don't even remember. Like they might have
Patsy
thrown us a bone
Cline or something like that.
and more of
Right.
Florence Welk
Well,
kind of.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much of that.
So you pushed
Yeah.
up against that, right? And you said, not for
Oh
me.
my God,
No.
did I push up against that? Yeah.
Was your mom horrified that you weren't going to be this debutante?
I mean, I still did that too. So she had a good hold on me through, I don't know, probably 26. But yeah, my junior year in college, I had to go back to Nashville, don the white dress and the gloves, the hair.
Mm-hmm.
You had a date that you took with you, but that was not who presented you. Your father presented you, because they're basically releasing you into the world to be a eligible marriage material lady at that point in time. And it was a big, like, it has no shortcoming of that culture. Like the school that I went to was an all girls school. Our most famous graduate is Reese Witherspoon. And yeah, it was that. But my family was fringe on that culture. We weren't as moneyed as these people were. Like I said, it was very important to my mother that I have this experience because she wished she had.
Right.
I mean, I can remember like going to college and being like, ooh, and just, cutting loose and doing my own thing.
Sowing your
but
oats.
like occasionally she'd wrangle me back in.
Was art school kind of a permissible kind of thing for somebody like you to do, as far as like growing up? Like, well, she can pretend to do her sweet little paintings while she's trying to land herself a husband. Like, was it that
100%.
kind of thing? Like, I could see, like, there were
100%.
so few careers for the generation before us as far as women went. You know, it was like, oh, well, I'm gonna my mom, she does listen to this. I have to not be a dick.
Right.
So like my mom she met my
That goes
dad.
on the blackmail reel, by the way, Will.
Yeah, he's got a huge one. I get to do whatever he says.
I mean, I imagine you both have some pretty good access to each other in that way.
Anyway, you were saying
Douglas does all the editing. He's got the reels of just me being a complete. Oh, I'm horrible. Anyway, but there were so few careers that were like available to women in the generation before that ahead of us. It was like, oh, it's nursing and it's this and it's, and it's it's
school
interesting.
Counselor, right? School counselor.
Right, school counselor, or well, you can be a painter. You can be a painter, and that'll be a perfectly acceptable
portrait painter.
That's right, and you can do that while you're raising children while they're sleeping, and your husband, the doctor, is often
right. Portrait painting. And I remember that being thrown out to me all the time. Portrait painting. I was like, have y'all seen my rendering? It's trash. I just was like, I'm going to be a portrait painter. I just kind of went along with it until I could maybe figure it out for my own.
Well, so how did all of this background, I mean, kind of how you are from your nurture family, from your nature family, and does any of that fit into the work you make?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And as I imagine we all do, I mean, I do want my viewer to be the person that puts their meaning onto it. But yeah, everything I make is I feel like stems back to my own personal experience. That's very important to me, to not try to take someone else's story and tell it, because I have done that. That was why I eventually kind of backed away from the pop art, because I feel like, or not backed away, but it's not as pop arty as pop art can be, because I feel like I don't need to tell the story of that. I need to tell my story through this lens, and then let other people find their meaning in it. And so I don't know if y'all have seen what I've been doing lately, but I've been doing a lot of like tattoo ladies.
Yeah, and I've seen progression with your work
Thank
from
you.
more pop art through, and I feel like you have to do the one in order to get to the other, in order to tell,
100%.
It's the
the
steps.
stories that you are able to tell now.
Yeah.
You had to learn almost the technique. And
Yeah.
so describe, give us the Zapplication 100-word or less description of your work, so the folks that don't
Um,
know.
okay. I'm going to give you my Zapplication. I make mixed media pieces using a variety of techniques, including seriography, photography, illustration, painting, about our culture, pop culture, and our position in it, hopefully with the spirit of humor and also creating a desire for the viewer to respond in their own way. I don't know if that sounded like nonsense,
It
but
sounded like a robot
it
reading it.
felt like nonsense. Yeah, it did.
Is it kind of a pushback or a commentary on how, images throughout time influence how we feel about ourselves, or
Yeah,
kind of that
yeah.
idealized version of
Ooh,
what we
write that
should
down.
be?
Right. Wait, Doug. No, absolutely. And I like making drawings that look like that they're from another time, but also like people like I'm at the beach running, holding my husband's hand,
Mm-hmm.
and just like real over the top. The thing that we're sold as a society is you're going to go on vacation and you're going to have this wonderful life where it's all going to be sunshine and lollipops, and there's a twist to that, because we may well and believe that that's going to happen, but a lot of people never have that experience, and it's so American, and all the, for lack of a better word, like bullshit about like bootstrapping and working my way to the top. I don't think any of us as our community can say that I mean, maybe a few people out there, but that we got there like on 100% without any help or assistance or a leg up, or it's hard. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you don't just jump into these careers of getting to do what you want to do. A lot of people never get that opportunity. I think I'm pushing back on that. And I call it nonsense when I talk to people about my artwork. It's like I like to focus on the nonsense of what we're fed.
It kind of makes us all feel like we're not doing it right, every damn day.
It's
Yeah.
like,
That's your poster or your
yeah.
sign behind you you're pointing at.
But I mean, like, that ain't me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's like,
Well, I love that with your work. You do have that vintage aesthetic, and
Mm-hmm.
you're talking
yeah.
about charm schools and having that, and the fact that, I mean, Douglas pointed out the fact that it sounds like something from the 40s. Well, some of your imagery kind of looks like
Yeah.
you're leaning on that imagery that classically looks like. Now, are you creating your own images, or do you also do found object imagery as well?
I used to do a lot more found object. At this point in time, it's just easier for me to get into Procreate and
Yeah.
draw what I want to draw. I
I
mean,
had
I
wondered about
am,
that, if it was like a sourced imagery that you
yeah.
build together. These are your drawings in Procreate. Yeah.
I have in the past, especially when I was using like photographic images. I mean, just straight ripping, because I believe in that. Like I believe, and I will fall on this and die with a sword. But like the people that are like, I came up with this idea all by myself. No, you didn't.
Right.
There is somebody that has done this before you, and that's okay. That's great. What you're doing is taking an idea that has definitely existed before and making it your own. And so I can remember when I first started doing shows, like people were real into like, don't take pictures of my work. And I understand that,
Mhm.
but also like, do take, in fact, go home and you make what I just made. And then I want to see it, because you're going to have a whole different spin on it. And it's going to be amazing or terrible. So I think that like people like Richard Prince that are just straight That's it to me. And a lot of people, and I can feel the eyes rolling as I say that.
What do you mean that's it? Describe that.
I mean, I think that's what I think is great.
Okay.
Because that man has basically said, yeah, this person took this photograph. And I understand, like, there's people that feel they get hurt about it because they didn't get the money from it. I get that. But also, I think that is clever in a way that is the most clever.
And there's also a design sense about it, even when you were just
Uh-huh.
taking images. I mean, I remember when I first met you, you were even taking like movie stills and things like that. You were saying something else with them. And I know that you've probably gotten into it with other people as far as like, how can you use the Big Lebowski in this piece?
What about copyright?
Right.
And I'm like,
I mean, I've done pieces in like a record store. People are like, do you have to pay a right because you're drawing Bob Dylan into your piece? And it's like, well, no, absolutely not. But what I wanted to say about that is that you could always recognize a certain sense of your design within those pieces. There was always something clever about the design of those. That was uniquely yourself. That was uniquely you, which is why I responded to it even in the early iterations of your work.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate that. It all works. It all works. And the people that believe that they've come up with their own creation, I mean, good for them too. I think there's room for all of it. And yeah. I also wanted to, this is a little bit of a shift, but I do want to make sure that this gets into something somehow. Yeah. When I started doing art shows, I am going to name drop a couple of people here. I didn't know how people were doing it. And there were several artists that I was sort of enamored with. One of them was Marjolaine. So this would have been like circa 2009. Sent her an email. I was like, hey, you don't know me, but I love what you do. And I want to do the same thing, and just, jotted it off. And God bless her. She wrote me back and was like, call me and let's talk. And I was like, yeah, be kidding me. This is amazing. Cause I did. I thought, I was like, she's so cool.
And you're talking about Marjolaine Vanderhart from Canada. We had her on as the first second episode of the whole run of the podcast. If anyone wants to check in on her conversation. But anyway,
she's amazing. She's always been a huge resource for so many of us.
Absolutely. But she just gave so freely of her time and herself. And just, we talked on the phone. She told me how to go about it. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And also to Tony Etherong, who y'all should have on the podcast.
Oh,
yeah. He is on our wish list.
Tony's work, and he can do everything, literally. He can make the most realistic pencil drawing you have ever seen in your whole life. He can make abstract artwork. He can make pop art. He's just a talent.
Yeah, he's a force.
He is a force. And he's also a 6'2" Thai guy who's just presence. I was like, man, this guy's got it. And this was years and years and years ago. And I had no fear or shame. And maybe I still don't at that time. But I just went up to him and I was like, I am such a fan of yours. And he just kind of took me under his wing and was like, I mean, you take your advice, what you need of it. But he was like, well, here's what I do. And I'm so thankful to those people. And even Will, this has again been a decade ago, but I guess this is just let's continue to embrace the people that are starting out doing this, because they're so important to generate even what we do. But this is no brags, but I'd gotten into Fort Worth. I was maybe 2 years in. I had no business doing that show, but I was lucky and they liked what I did. But I didn't know I was like, how does this work? And what's this thing with setting a tent under a tent? And I had reached out to another artist and they were more frustrated with who's this kid that rolled up in here and got into Fort Worth on their first.
I feel like a lot, like if you have a new voice, I think your odds of getting into some of these bigger shows are higher, because if you have a new voice, I mean, I did the same thing where I was like right out of the gate, I got into Fort Worth, and I felt like they were looking for something a little bit different, and they hadn't
And
seen
that's
you, you know?
important.
It's
That's
huge.
They need to do that. They need to do that. You know, when I got my waitlist letter for Coconut Grove the other day, mad, mad, mad. But then I was like, no, that's what needs to happen. They don't need me there 12 years in a row. They need to see some new stuff. And I hope that is what happened. The Kim Days are out there killing it because they should be seen. But anyway, the first artist I reached out to was like, hard pass, be happy you're in. Good luck. I somehow connected with Will, and Will too was like, give me a phone call. Let's talk about it. And he did. He walked me through. Do you even remember this, Will? Do you
You
remember?
know, I
Okay.
remember being next to you in Kentuck and telling you about the $5,000, like, where's the biggie? You know, you had
Get
a
a big
bunch of little
piece.
tiny stuff. That's the only advice I remember giving you. But
No, we talked on the phone,
oh,
and you
yeah,
walked me through how that can be a very complicated setup and windy. And I just was so grateful to everybody and want to do the same. I see like new artists out on the street. I know they've got emerging artist program and whatnot, but just to not be like that person that's like, why are you here? And you
right.
stole my spot. And
We're going to talk about this too on future podcasts, but that's one of the big questions with emerging artists is how to catch them before they've already kind of like had the momentum to start shows. You know, they get a profile on Zapplication, they just start doing shows, and then they're like, oh, wait, I don't qualify for emerging anymore because I've been doing this for 2 years. So how do you get them right out of the gate? And we need to be, as a community, open-armed and a source for one, for the industry, but two, for what we've devoted our lives to is putting beauty and art out into the world. We need to foster that amongst the young, that they can keep
even
doing
if
that
they're
too.
not young.
Yeah, a lot of times the new artists are not necessarily what you'd say young, but they are emerging, and they're bringing
exactly,
it's
right.
still a new voice that hasn't been heard or seen.
Right, for sure.
No good can come from discouraging new art. It's just it's weird to see.
It's a locked in system. If y'all will indulge me for a second. I mean,
definitely.
I do worry about 45 people got awards. Those 45 people are coming back. That's going to limit the new people. It does. I mean, we're kind of locking ourselves up at the same time that we're, hopefully trying to bring new people in. It's complicated. I mean, I don't run shows. It's complicated.
Sure. And you can't have a total shake up, because otherwise daddy can't buy new shoes. And I just referred to myself as daddy on the podcast. So
that was gross, Will. That was really gross.
Whatever. I'm going to say it again next week. See where it goes.
Interesting turn.
So back to your work, your mixed media work, and working in Procreate and creating your mixed media pieces. Can we talk a little bit about using digital technology and that whole controversy in what people think about it? Using that kind of format.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in mixed media and then quickly switched to digital media. I've always, even when I was in school and it wasn't even a thing yet, I can remember talking to people about like digital art and like how I felt like it was going to be transformative, because I was into photography, and that was at that point basically what digital art was like photo layering and doing
digital collaging kind of thing.
Yeah. But with the advent of the tablet and just basically being able to take an entire studio and put it into a small device, and that you have access to brushes and different things that make things look just like if I were to put a painting on the wall. And so, yeah, I'm all in on digital. I know a lot of people get skeeved out by it because it seems like a cheat. And I would say to those people, sit down and try to do it. And that will maybe quickly iron out how cheaty it feels, because you're still putting pen to device to make whatever, but it also allows you to like shift and change. And I mean, I don't know if y'all have seen videos, but like I will project images up onto my pieces. I am not above, I don't understand why we've got to make it like as complicated as possible. I'm like,
You mean like rules, like what is? Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Like, let's, I love, I mean, I think it's a great idea when shows are like 2D or 3D or both. I would like to go back to doing digital, like going into that category, but I do feel that like real quickly afterwards, it became this weird ground for like, I made a Xerox copy. And now this makes this digital artwork, and it doesn't. And then you have people like Kate and Jason that are out there literally killing it digitally.
Right.
I mean, y'all just don't understand the amount of hours that Jason.
They're killing, and they're not breaking any rules. They're doing
not.
exactly, and they were cutting edge as far as it's pretty interesting to see that work
Yeah.
grow too, and to see where that goes. She's talking about Katie Harold and her husband Jason Breck out in Nashville, who are both digital artists. And so interesting stuff, just so you have a reference point, not to name drop.
I mean, they're worth name dropping because there are people out there. We split an Airbnb with Jason. It's been a while ago, but like, I mean, he worked the whole time.
Yeah.
We were in Utah, and Aaron and I are just out there having sandwiches and like staring into space. And Jason,
you're saying he's on his device making artwork?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, just nonstop. And then if you look at, not to go on a big Jason Bruick, I love you, man, but like,
yeah, I do too. I'm happy to talk about the work. It's because it is interesting to see. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just got excited. But it's just like to see that furthering the medium as well, to kind of see where it can kind of go, and he's starting to add gold leaf to it and starting to get more physical with the work as well. So,
right. And that's the thing is like, I mean, my artwork is still, and I think that I know painters, they start out like, say you were doing a painting, like a setup, and you wanted to make a scene. What they'll do is they'll take different photographs of like different things going on and then put it all together on the computer. I mean, this is how they teach painting now. And then what you do is you make a mock-up, like a digital mock-up of what your painting is going to be, and then you work from that in whatever capacity that is, whether it is, painting from a picture or gridding it out or projecting it or whatever. But like, it starts on the level of putting it together in the computer.
Oh, my question, not being an artist working 2D like how either one of you work. So it is a little bit like, I feel like a dum-dum in some sense. Is really the big digital debate is that you're using technology to layer and create imagery, or is it that when it's over, when the piece is finished, that you can press print and reproduce it multiple times? Is that really where the heart of people's issue with digital is?
I don't know what people's problem is with it. I'll be honest with you.
I think it is. I mean, I don't mean to. I mean, if we're talking, it's a three-way talk. But I mean, I definitely think that's what it is. I think that's the big issue is that they're the only people that can then slip it into a bag at an originals only show and sell 25 to 100 copies. So I do think that that's what you are running into as far as digital. But I don't know that you do that, Sarah. Do you? Are you
No, I'm a one-offer.
Yeah.
And also, like, at this point in time, it'd be real hard for me to, I mean, I might try it, but like, it'd be hard for me to jury back into digital just because of the wood and the resin and the paint and the
so many different elements that you're using.
Yeah. I mean, I should be able to, because I do I'd say a third of the work is me on the computer digitally making the piece, and then a third of the work is how to make that into the large piece. Thanks, Will. to put on the back wall. And those two things are not the same. Can I print that out and just smack it on there and call it a day? Absolutely. But I don't like to do that.
That's not really what you're about anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I did. And I think it's just as legitimate as what I'm doing now. And also like the whole reproduction thing, I don't know. I mean, I don't care. Do reproductions. I actually found that it cut down on people buying original artwork. I think we should have all of it. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm. Who cares? Like, you need to bring out some reproductions so that everyone can have a whack at being able to afford something. Yeah, I think that's okay. I don't think that we should have buy and sell and production studios. I'm not really for that.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think, there's kind of different ways people react to the world. It's like, if I'm not selling, it's because of what's happening in this other booth across from me, and it sounds to me like you're saying everybody do themselves and you figure it out and, you know what I mean? Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
And also let's be friends.
And let's be friends, right.
I mean, let's lift it. I mean, I don't want to, it's funny coming from me, but let's lift each other up and pat each other on the back. And like, I do think we do a lot of that, but also I do hear a lot of people complaining about, and maybe that's just who we are. I like to complain too, but like, in the end, the more that we talk people up and know that everyone's doing work, everyone's taking shortcuts where they can, not to affect the integrity of it. But like, I assume we're all kind of approaching it the same.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Integrity and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even like, if I were to take an image and use it once, that's the beauty of digital artwork right there. Like, so I've drawn an illustration in Procreate and now I have that forever, and I can take that illustration and project it into this piece. Is that a reproduction? No, but it is using something I've made again and again if I want to.
And the scale can change.
You get to tell that story.
Yeah, you can tell the story. The scale can change. It can be told in a different way. Yeah, all of that.
To progress that narrative too. That's I use the same characters in my work.
Right.
The other here, this person over here, where it has a narrative thread throughout, and you can say
it's a developing story.
That's right. You can use those words if you want.
Here, let me get my pen again.
Well, we kind of have come to a kumbaya moment here, lifting people up and kind of doing ourselves.
I don't want to say favorite, but man, I really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you, Will. I'm glad I got to speak with both of you, even though I was afraid that Will and I might go off on whatever.
We made you scared.
We did it.
We did a good job.
Well, here's your opportunity to get all your snark out right now before we stop recording, if you want.
I don't have any snark. I love everybody. Y'all don't have to love me, but I love you.
Oh.
Hell yeah. Well, tell Aaron we said hi and good luck fishing out there. I hope he catches a big one today.
Oh, yeah. He's going out tonight. Big drum fishing night.
Oh, nice. I hope he catches a monster.
Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. Really appreciate you.
Y'all are the best.
Thank you.
Will, my favorite part of this talk was, when you guys were talking, really 2D kind of things, and it's
sure.
I a little bit felt like I'm trying to follow you guys and I'm trying to keep up because it's such a different experience than what I focus on in my work. We have these different experiences and we get to learn from each other. And I just think it's just so cool to hear all the different ways, 3-dimensionally, 2-dimensionally, whatever.
Yeah, there's a common dialogue that we don't need to fill in the blanks with when we're talking as far as like 2D, but it's all part of the same, part of the same world. But I hear what you mean.
And I like hearing different artist stories, like when she talks about getting out of college and being like she loved that part of it, and then all of a sudden she's like, I guess I forgot the part about where I have to start thinking about making a living out of it. You know what I mean? She just enjoyed that. And hearing all these different paths that artists take it's really great just to hear each other's journeys because it's so different than what a normal person goes through, so to speak, quote unquote.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting too to hear like leisure, is a huge part of her, and that her work has to be something that can accommodate that. I don't think leisure, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see leisure as part of that Sigwarthian Midwest work ethic. I see you guys you take your leisure, you take your time off, and you need to recharge. But you guys seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, are kind of workaholics. So your work lends itself to that. You have things for everyone.
Well, I understand what you're saying because we've had to hustle over the years. And there's a lot of components to that. I think the nature of being a glassblower makes us hustle, having young kids. But it's interesting. It's been coming to me multiple points through the podcast just the last few months here, how important it is for us to slow down. And it's kind of happening now. We've gotten through that whole surgery thing.
Right.
We can breathe a little bit. It's a good feeling. And it's kind of a good reevaluation of how we've been doing things over the years.
Well, that's great news because the economy is crashing and you're going to have to go back to waiting tables.
Oh, damn you.
Get to work.
No, that's right. Get to work is right. I was listening to REM this morning. The world is collapsing around our ears. Well, how are we going to fix it? Get into the studio, make work that excites us, and that's the way through it. So get to work, everyone.
Wear sunscreen, eat fiber. See you next week.
All right, take care.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.